let's be clear, this isn't just a story about conquest. This is an investigation into the single greatest catastrophe in human history. We're about to uncover how the world as we know it was literally born from an apocalypse. In the century after the first European ships made landfall, up to 90% of the entire population of the Americas just vanished. This wasn't a decline. It was a near total collapse of entire civilizations. So what happened? I mean, how did these vibrant, complex societies, homed to tens of millions of people, just crumble so completely, so fast? The answer isn't simple, and, it's a whole lot darker than the story you probably learned in school. To really get to the bottom of this, we need to look at three key factors. First, a biological shockwave that just wiped out populations. Then, an asymmetric war that toppled empires. And finally, three totally different colonial blueprints that decided what would happen next. Okay, so let's start with the most devastating weapon of all. And the crazy thing is, the conquerors didn't even know they were carrying it. See, the first wave of the invasion, it wasn't soldiers, it was disease. Just look at the sheer scale of this collapse. Take central Mexico. In 1519, before the Spanish ever showed up, the population was somewhere around 25 million people. But by the year 1600, it had plummeted to just 1.5 million. That's a drop of over 90% in a single lifetime. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. An Aztec survivor described the scene like this. They died in heaps, like bedbugs. This was what's called a virgin soil epidemic. The people of the Americas had been biologically cut off for thousands of years, which meant they had zero immunity to the diseases Europeans had been living with and building up resistance to for centuries. These were the real conquerors. Smallpox, measles, typhus. These things raced ahead of any army, killing rulers, shattering communities, and throwing entire empires into chaos long before a single shot was ever fired. They were the silent, unstoppable vanguard of the apocalypse. But here's the thing. Disease alone doesn't explain everything. Yeah, it created chaos, for sure, but it didn't single-handedly topple empires. So that brings up the second huge question in our investigation. How did a few thousand adventurers conquer millions of people? The numbers here are just staggering. Historians figured that at the very peak of the conquests, there were only about 4,000 to 10,000 active conquistadors across 2 entire continents. It was this tiny force going up against empires that could field armies of tens of thousands. So seriously, how did they pull it off? Well, the answer lies in asymmetric warfare. European steel swords and armor could literally shatter the obsidian blades of Aztec warriors. The arquebus, an early gun, it was inaccurate, it was slow, but it created this terrifying noise and smoke. And maybe most important of all, cavalry. Horses were completely unknown in the Americas, and they were a devastating psychological weapon. Basically, they were the 16th century equivalent of a tank. But you know what? Technology wasn't even their sharpest weapon. Their strategy was. Guys like Cortés and Pizarro were masters of this ruthlessly effective playbook. They didn't just conquer empires, they started civil wars. They found local rivalries, allied with people who already hated their imperial rulers, and then used them as the main fighting force. The final move? Kidnap the king, paralyze the whole chain of command, and then just sit back and watch the empire tear itself apart. So, disease cleared the way, and this mix of tech and strategy broke the empires. But what came next? This is our third and final line of investigation, because not all colonization was the same. The Spanish, the French, and the English, they each showed up with a completely different plan for what this new world was supposed to be. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. For Spain, the goal was extraction. They wanted gold and silver, and to get it, they needed native labor. So that led to a system of subjugation, but also integration and conversion, which created the huge mestizo cultures of Latin America. France, on the other hand, wanted trade, specifically furs. And you can't get furs without native partners, so their whole model was built on alliances and even intermarriage. And then you had England. Their goal was simple: land. They weren't there for a quick score, they were there to stay, which meant native peoples weren't partners or subjects, they were obstacles to be removed. The Spanish system of encomienda really captures their whole approach. Basically, a Spanish lord was granted a piece of land, and all the people on it. In theory, he was supposed to protect them and convert them to Christianity, but in practice, yeah, It was a brutal feudal system of forced labor that powered the whole empire. This population difference tells the entire story. The French needed native partners for the fur trade, so their presence was pretty small, just a few trading posts here and there. But the English, they didn't want partners. They wanted land for permanent towns, and that's why their population exploded. This simple demographic fact really sealed the fate of native peoples in North America. This sentiment, which became pretty common during the English colonial period and later in the United States, is just a stark contrast to the Spanish model. I mean, the Spanish system was brutally exploitative, no question, but it saw natives as a labor force to be controlled. The English model of settlement, though, increasingly saw them as just an inconvenience to be wiped off the map. So what happens when you combine all three of these factors? A biological apocalypse, a completely lopsided military conquest, and three competing visions for an entire continent. Well, you get the world we have today. It was never just one thing. That's the key takeaway. It was this devastating convergence of all three. Disease cleared the land, technology broke the empires, and then the very different goals of Spain, France, and England reshaped everything that was left. The echoes of these three blueprints are absolutely everywhere today, just written onto the map of the Americas. The Spanish goal of subjugation, as brutal as it was, forced a level of interaction that gave rise to the vibrant mixed heritage mestizo cultures that define Latin America. The French need for trade partners created this legacy of alliance that really shaped Canada. And the English thirst for land? Well, that led directly to a history of violent displacement and the reservation system that's still a stark reality in the United States. And this whole thing kicked off the Columbian Exchange, a planetary reshuffling of life that changed what people ate and how they lived on every single continent. It's really the ultimate question we're left with, right? When you look at the biological reality, the technological gap, and the motivations of these empires, was this catastrophic outcome just inevitable? Could this clash of worlds have ever ended peacefully? The answers aren't easy, but understanding these forces is so crucial to understanding our world right now. If you want us to keep digging into history's biggest questions, make sure you subscribe. And let us know in the comments, what other historical cataclysms should we investigate next?